Are you trying to make a new program, but you're getting a bit confused about these compound, isolation, and unilateral exercises, and you're not sure where they fit into your program? Well, let's break down what they are and how they can work together to make a great program. First, let's look at compound exercises. These are your classic squat, bench, deadlift. You can also count pull-ups, rows, overhead presses. There's quite a big range of them. And what they are is, in the name, compound, you're using multiple muscle groups. You can think of these as your full bodybuilders. These exercises are great for a bang for your buck, especially for beginners when they're just trying to get into the gym, not do too many exercises, but still get a good full body workout. Compound exercises are usually a bit more demanding in terms of the fatigue they put on you, because you are required to use a lot more muscles to help move the weight. For example, with your deadlifts, you're not just using your legs to move the weight. You might be initiating with your legs, but you're also really using your hips, and you have to make sure that you're bracing correctly so you're using your core. And a lot of the time, for better technique, you have to really engage your lats and upper back to make sure that you've got good tension. So you can see throughout that movement already, we're incorporating a lot of different muscles. And that's where a lot of the fatigue can come in. Other compound exercises do the same, with squats requiring more than just your quads to work, and with bench requiring more than just your chest. All these exercises have stabilizing muscles that have to work hard to make sure that you're not going to be messing up. With that being said, you usually see that compound exercises are put more into the category of building a lot of good strength through them. You start putting them at the start of your workout and loading them with a bit more weight and lower reps. But it obviously depends on the type of phasing that you're going through. For beginners, I definitely recommend putting compound exercises at the start of your program and taking your time to really learn the technique required to be safe, but also use the muscles required. Depending on your lifting experience, if you're a bit more advanced, you obviously have been through and done most of these exercises before, so compound exercises you might be able to play with, maybe superset some of them. Most of the time they'll be at the start because you want to be fresh for them, as they require, as we have said, a lot of different muscles and they're quite fatiguing. Next, let's look at isolation movements. These can be considered your tricep pushdowns, your bicep curls, your lateral raises, your leg curls, your leg extensions. Any movement that specifically isolates a certain muscle. So for example, with the tricep pushdown, you're really trying to isolate your triceps and really grow them. Isolation movements are a fan favorite for bodybuilders, as they can really hone in and help develop a certain muscle. But it can also be great for other disciplines like trying to do strength work. You can hammer out your compounds, and then you can help use these isolation movements as accessories to work on any weaknesses that you might have. For example, say that you're doing bench press, but you notice that your triceps are giving out way sooner, you could probably chuck in some tricep work to help get them stronger. Isolation movements are usually a bit more localized in terms of the fatigue, since you're really isolating a muscle, in the name, isolation. So in that way, you're not getting the full fatigue that you might get with compound exercises, but you also want to put them sort of near the middle and end of your workout, because if you were to put them before a compound movement, then you're going to really fatigue a muscle. And when you go do that compound movement, say for example, as we said, bench press, you go hammer out a bunch of triceps, you do 4 sets of triceps, you absolutely cook them, and then you go do bench press, you're going to have a hell of a hard time getting the weight that you normally do on bench press. But that's not to be said that you can't go do isolations first. If that's in the program that you want to run, or if you've got specific goals that require you to do that first, perfectly fine as well. This is just a generic sort of guideline that you can follow. And isolation movements sort of blend into unilateral movements. Unilateral movements being things like your single arm bent over row, your Bulgarians, anything that works one side of your body. Unilateral movements are great for working on imbalances, and they pair quite well with isolation movements. For example, doing dumbbell bicep curls, that's a type of isolation. Doing lateral raises, that's a type of isolation with unilateral. And so there's not really any sort of position that you can put your unilateral movements into a workout, as they sort of just blend in with those isolation movements in a way. But you also do sort of get a compound effect. For example, doing a isolation unilateral bicep curl with dumbbells is not the same as doing a unilateral work with a bent over row. With the bent row, you're still doing unilateral and you're requiring more muscles. Sure, you're targeting your back, but it's sort of a 50-50 with that isolation compound movement. But when you're looking at the grand picture of a program, definitely recommendation is having compound movements at the start. Like I said, obviously, unless you've got a desire, like I know that some elite bodybuilders, they'll put isolation movements at the start because they really want to hammer out. For intermediate and beginners and anyone that sort of just goes to the gym to make sure that they're staying strong and healthy, having those compound movements at the start help you get a real good all-round work going on. For example, again, with deadlifts, you're working your back, you're working your legs, you're working your glutes, you're making sure that your posterior chain is strong. And so you hammer that out at the start, and then you can go in and you can isolate your quads, you can isolate your biceps, your triceps, and build up that localized fatigue rather than doing that first, then trying to deadlift at the end. You're going to be cooked. One way you could also look at programming these exercises, say you're short on time, is probably going like compound, and then you have an isolation movement as a superset to that compound. You can either have it as an accessory to that, or you can have it as a different muscle group so you're not fatiguing them in a way, so you have that rest period while you're doing the other exercise. But supersets and structuring those are a whole nother thing that we'll get into in another video. I hope this video was able to help clarify some of the differences between compound, isolation, and unilateral movements, how they actually can work together quite well, and where you can structure them in your program to get the best bang for your buck. If you want more tips to help you thrive, in the description you'll see a link that connects you with my email list where you get 33 tips in 33 days that will change your life in 33 ways. I hope you have all enjoyed this video and you've got some more clarity. If you have any other questions, chuck a comment down in the description and I'll get back to you. Until then, I'll see you guys in the next video.